August 15, 1940. 0630 hours. Luftwaffe, Jagdgeschütz. 20th Briefing Room, Pas-de-Calais, France. Hauptmann Joachim Müncheberg studied reconnaissance photographs of Hawker Hurricanes lined across Manston airfield, their fabric-covered wings and fixed-pitch propellers clearly visible in the morning light. Intelligence Officer Major Hans Roth tapped the images with his cigarette holder. Obsolete target practice, Herr Hauptmann. Slower than our Bf 109s by 80 kilometers per hour. Less maneuverable. Outgunned. Around Müncheberg, 27 Messerschmitt pilots, veterans of Poland and France, flying the most advanced fighter aircraft in Europe, laughed at the prospect of engaging what Adolf Galland had termed flying furniture. Their Bf 109 Emil could climb to 6,000 meters in 7 minutes and 40 seconds. The Hurricane needed 11 minutes. None of them knew that within 72 hours, those fabric-covered wings would account for more Luftwaffe kills than every Spitfire squadron combined. The laughter died when Müncheberg produced the casualty reports from the previous day's operations. Jagdgeschwader 51 had lost 4 Bf 109s over Dover. All 4 pilots reported being engaged by Hurricanes before going down. Oberleutnant Franz von Werra, who bailed out over the Channel and was rescued, described his Hurricane opponent as flying through my 20mm cannon strikes as if they were raindrops. The Luftwaffe had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. Since 1937, Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring had promised Hitler that his airmen would sweep British fighters from the sky within weeks. Intelligence assessments compiled by Oberst Josef Beppo, Schmid's 5th Directorate, catalogued every aircraft in RAF Fighter Command. 640 Hurricanes, 372 Spitfires, and assorted obsolete types. Schmid's analysis was unequivocal. The Hurricane, with its fabric-covered fuselage and thick wings designed for 1935 specifications, represented no serious threat to the Messerschmitt Bf 109 Emil. German test pilots who had examined a captured Hurricane at Rechlin reported maximum speed of 516 km per hour compared to the Bf 109's 570. Rate of climb inferior, service ceiling lower. The Hurricane mounted 8 rifle-caliber Browning machine guns against the Bf 109's 2 20mm cannon and 2 machine guns. What those reports failed to capture was what squadron leader Peter Townsend would later call quod detruit, the Hurricane's refusal to acknowledge it had been killed. Over the next 4 months, this supposedly obsolete aircraft would destroy 1,715 German aircraft, more than every other British fighter type combined. The fabric wings and thick airframe that German engineers dismissed as primitive would prove to be a combat architecture that absorbed punishment, kept flying, and kept killing. But Müncheberg's problems were just beginning. August 16th, the first major engagement over Kent. Müncheberg led his Schwarm, 4 Bf 109s in Finger 4 formation, as escort for Dornier Do's 17 bombers attacking Manston airfield. At 4,000 meters, his wingman called out contacts. 8 Hurricanes, climbing from the south. Müncheberg pushed his throttle forward, diving to engage, before the British fighters could reach the bombers. The Hurricane he selected never attempted evasion. It turned directly into his attack. Müncheberg opened fire at 300 meters, textbook gunnery range. His gunsight pipper centered on the Hurricane's engine. Cowling. 2-second burst. 20mm Oerlikon cannon shells and 7.92mm machine gun rounds converged on target. He watched fabric tear from the Hurricane's fuselage, saw pieces of cowling separate. The Hurricane shuddered. It kept coming. At 150 meters, both aircraft opened fire simultaneously. Müncheberg's Bf 109 mounted two Oerlikon FF 20mm cannon with 60 rounds per gun, and two Rheinmetall-Borsig MG 17 machine guns with 1,000 rounds per gun. The Hurricane pilot, later identified as Pilot Officer Eric Mars of No. 501 Squadron, fired all 8 Browning Mark II machine guns. Each gun fed from a 338-round ammunition box, delivering a combined weight of fire of 9.6 kilograms per second. Müncheberg's cockpit canopy shattered, his instrument panel disintegrated. Coolant from his punctured Daimler-Benz DB601A engine sprayed across the windscreen. He broke left, rolled inverted, and dove for cloud cover with his engine temperature gauge climbing past 120 degrees Celsius. Mars's Hurricane, trailing white coolant vapor and with fabric hanging from its port wing, pursued a Dornier instead. The Hawker Hurricane entered RAF service in December 1937 as the Air Ministry's desperate response to German rearmament. Chief designer Sidney Cam had created what the Air Ministry initially rejected as too conventional: a monoplane fighter built using traditional Hawker construction methods. Steel tube fuselage framework covered with Irish linen fabric, doped and painted. Thick wing section optimized for stability rather than speed. Fixed pitch 2-blade wooden propeller. When the prototype first flew on November 6, 1935, test pilot Flight Lieutenant Philip Lucas reported it as steady as a rock, praise that masked what German engineers would later interpret as damning limitation. The Bf 109's thin wings and stressed metal construction represented modern aerodynamic efficiency. The Hurricane's thick wing and fabric covering represented outdated 1920s thinking, except Sidney Cam had designed the Hurricane for a purpose German intelligence never grasped. Not air superiority dogfighting, but bomber destruction. The 80 Browning guns were positioned in the wings to create a killing zone. All 8 converged at 240 meters, delivering a concentrated cone of fire that no bomber could survive. Squadron leader Stanford Tuck described the effect. You pressed the button and the target simply came apart. The fabric-covered structure absorbed battle damage that would punch through the Bf 109's stressed aluminum skin and destroy critical systems. Cannon shells that would penetrate a Bf 109's fuselage and explode among fuel lines, hydraulics, and control cables would pass through Hurricane fabric, punch through the other side, and leave the aircraft flyable. By August 20th, Luftwaffe intelligence officer Major Hans Roth faced a statistical impossibility. His casualty reports showed Hurricane squadrons accounting for 63% of German aircraft destroyed over England. Werner Mulders, Geschwader Commodore of Jagdgeschwader 51 and holder of the Knight's Cross, submitted a combat assessment that contradicted every pre-war assumption. The Hurricane's stability makes it a superior gun platform against our bombers. Its construction allows it to survive damage that would destroy our fighters. We have underestimated this aircraft. What Mulders did not yet know was that the Hurricane's greatest advantage had nothing to do with performance specifications. What they found at RAF Hawkinger on September 3rd defied every assumption about British fighter doctrine. Hauptmann Horst Tietzen of Jagdgeschwader 51 force-landed his damaged Bf 109 3 kilometers from the airfield after engaging Hurricanes over Dover. British soldiers captured him before he could destroy his aircraft. During interrogation, RAF intelligence officer squadron leader Dennis Felkin walked Tietzen past a Hurricane undergoing field repairs, a practice the Germans would never risk with frontline fighters so close to enemy territory. The Hurricane's engine cowling lay open, ground crew worked with simple hand tools, replacing a damaged cylinder head on the Rolls-Royce Merlin III engine. Tietzen watched a mechanic unbolt the cylinder head, lift it free, position a replacement, and torque the bolts. Total elapsed time 47 minutes. A fitter nearby patched fabric on the fuselage using Irish linen, dope, and paint. The repairs that would require the Bf 109 to return to a depot maintenance facility were being completed in an open field by 4 men with basic tooling. Felkin noted Tietzen's reaction in his report. The prisoner expressed disbelief that operational fighters could be maintained under field conditions. When informed that Hurricane squadrons routinely achieved 90% serviceability rates, he stated this was impossible with modern aircraft. The Bf 109's Daimler-Benz DB601A inverted V12 engine represented German precision engineering at its apex. Fuel injection instead of carburetors, overhead camshafts, direct drive to a variable pitch propeller. It produced 1,175 horsepower at takeoff and required skilled technicians, specialized tools, and depot-level facilities for major repairs. Average time to replace a damaged cylinder bank, 14 hours under depot conditions. The Hurricane's Rolls-Royce Merlin III was deliberately designed for field maintainability. Updraft carburetor instead of fuel injection, simpler, more reliable, though it caused the engine to cut out in negative G maneuvers. Pushrod-operated valves instead of overhead cams. Modular construction that allowed major components to be replaced by squadron mechanics. It produced 1,030 horsepower at takeoff and could be torn down to major components with standard RAF Toolkit No. 7, contents, spanners, screwdrivers, torque, wrench, feeler gauges, basic hand tools. Sidney Cam had designed the entire Hurricane around a philosophy the Luftwaffe's technical branch considered primitive. Ease of repair mattered more than performance optimization. The fabric covering that German engineers mocked as outdated could be patched in field conditions by non-specialist personnel. The thick wing that reduced top speed provided space for ammunition boxes, guns, and mounting hardware that could be accessed without removing wing panels. The wide-track landing gear that reduced ground handling performance made the aircraft nearly impossible to ground loop, allowing it to operate from rough forward airfields. By September 7th, Adolf Galland had lost 12 pilots from Jagdgeschwader 26. 8 had been shot down by hurricanes. He submitted a combat report that would reach Göring's desk in Berlin. The Hurricane is not the easy target we expected. It fights like a bull and refuses to die. Our 20mm cannon strikes that would destroy a Bf 109 pass through its fabric covering without critical damage. It absorbs punishment, remains controllable, and continues to engage. Most concerning, British squadrons maintain higher serviceability rates than our own, despite higher combat tempo. They repair aircraft we would consider destroyed. Oberst Theo Osterkamp, commander of Jagdfliegerführer II, responsible for all fighter operations over southern England, compiled serviceability statistics that September that revealed the scope of British advantage. Average Bf 109 squadron serviceability, 68%. Average Hurricane squadron serviceability, 87%. The arithmetic was devastating. A Hurricane squadron with 18 aircraft could launch 15 fighters. A Bf 109 grouper with 40 aircraft could launch 27 fighters. Per aircraft, the British maintained a 41% availability advantage. The obsolete target practice aircraft was winning through engineering philosophy the Luftwaffe had never considered. Sustainable combat operations mattered more than technical superiority. What German pilots were now learning was that the Hurricane's advantages extended far beyond maintainability. The captured RAF tactical manual revealed the full scope of the threat. Oberst Josef Schmid received the document on September 12th from intelligence officers who had recovered it from a downed Hurricane near Calais. Combat instructions for fighter command squadrons, issued July 1940 by Air Ministry. Schmid read Section 4, Hurricane Employment Against Bomber Formations. The doctrine was explicit. Hurricanes would engage bombers, while Spitfires dealt with fighter escorts. Not because Hurricanes were inferior, but because they were purpose-built bomber-destroyers. The manual specified attack procedures that exploited every advantage German intelligence had dismissed as weakness. The Hurricane's stability, that flying furniture handling, made it the superior gun platform for deflection shooting against bombers. Its thick wing allowed pilots to maintain control at speeds where the Bf-109 became dangerously responsive. The 8-gun broadside could be fired in continuous bursts of 4 to 6 seconds, 32 to 48 rounds per gun, without destabilizing the aircraft. A Bf-109 firing its cannon for more than 2 seconds experienced significant recoil forces that disrupted aim. Schmid forwarded his analysis to Luftwaffe High Command with a warning that arrived too late. We have misidentified the Hurricane's role. It is not an air superiority fighter competing with our Bf-109. It is a specialized bomber-destroyer that outperforms our fighters in that specific mission. RAF Fighter Command has optimized their force structure around this division of labor. We face a more sophisticated defensive system than previously assessed. Reichsmarschall Göring read the report on September 15th, the day the Luftwaffe launched its largest daylight attack on London. 114 bombers escorted by 406 fighters. The Hurricane squadrons ignored German fighter escorts and drove directly into the bomber formations. Number 303 Polish Squadron, flying Hurricanes, destroyed 16 German aircraft without loss. Number 501 Squadron claimed 14. Number 242 Squadron, led by squadron leader Douglas Bader, destroyed 12. Total German losses that day, 56 aircraft. Hurricane squadrons accounted for 34. Göring ordered a tactical conference at his headquarters in The Hague on September 17th. Galland, Mulders, Osterkamp, and every Geschwaderkommodore commanding fighter units over England attended. The transcript, recovered from Luftwaffe archives in 1945, records Göring's opening statement. Gentlemen, explain to me how an obsolete British fighter is destroying my bombers faster than your modern Messerschmitts can protect them. Galland's response entered the historical record. Reichsmarschall, the Hurricane is not obsolete. It is optimized for a mission we did not anticipate. Our Bf-109 carries 180 rounds of 20mm ammunition. Total, 3 seconds of fire per gun. The Hurricane carries 2,704 rounds of 303 ammunition, approximately 16 seconds of sustained fire. Against bombers, volume of fire matters more than shell size. The Hurricane pilot can make multiple attack passes. We must break off to conserve ammunition. Mulders added technical assessment that challenged fundamental Luftwaffe doctrine. The Hurricane's construction absorbs damage to non-critical areas. Our pilots report multiple instances of Hurricanes continuing to fight with fabric torn away, coolant leaking, even with cylinders destroyed. The aircraft continues to fly and shoot. A Bf-109 with similar damage would be uncontrollable. We designed for performance. They designed for survivability. The strategic implications extended beyond tactical aviation. General der Flieger Hans Jeschonek, chief of the Luftwaffe General Staff, compiled loss statistics through September that revealed operational collapse. Since August 13th, the Luftwaffe had lost 642 aircraft over Britain, Fighter Command had lost 410, but Fighter Command's losses were being replaced faster than German production could match. Hawker Aircraft Limited's factory at Langley produced 130 Hurricanes per month using semi-skilled labour and simple tooling. Messerschmitt's Regensburg plant produced 150 Bf-109s per month, requiring skilled craftsmen and precision machinery. More critically, Hurricane repair rates vastly exceeded Bf-109 recovery rates. Of the 410 Fighter Command losses, 207 aircraft were repairable, ground crews cannibalized, crashed Hurricanes for parts, rebuilt damaged airframes, and returned aircraft to service within days. German aircraft that crashed in England were total losses. Even aircraft that limped back to France often required depot-level maintenance that removed them from combat for weeks. Major Hannes Trautloft, Geschwader Commodore of Jagdgeschwader 54, submitted a morale assessment on September 25th that quantified the psychological impact. Our pilots no longer consider the Hurricane an easy victory. They report that Hurricane pilots attack with aggression that borders on recklessness. British pilots position their aircraft to absorb our fire while manoeuvring to shoot down our bombers. They trade hits for kills. Our pilots increasingly avoid Hurricane squadrons when possible. This represents a fundamental reversal of our pre-war confidence. By September 30th, the traditional end date for the battle of Britain's most intense phase, Hurricane squadrons had destroyed 956 German aircraft. Total Fighter Command victories, 1,733. The Hurricane's 55% share of kills came from 32 operational squadrons, compared to 19 Spitfire squadrons. Per squadron, Hurricanes were destroying German aircraft at nearly identical rates to Spitfires, despite being slower, less maneuverable, and technically inferior on paper. The aircraft German intelligence had dismissed as obsolete target practice had broken the Luftwaffe's offensive capability. Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain, indefinitely on October 12th. The postponement would become permanent. But the Hurricane's impact would extend far beyond the skies over southern England. Behind the statistics were human stories that revealed why German pilots had learned to fear an aircraft they were supposed to dominate. Flight Lieutenant Robert Stanford Tuck of No. 257 Squadron recorded his experience on September 7th in his combat log. Engaged Bf-109 at 2,000 feet over Maidstone, he got in first, cannon strikes along my port wing and fuselage, felt the aircraft shudder, fabric tearing, kept flying. I put a 3-second burst into his engine at 100 yards. He went down trailing black smoke, landed at Debden with 67 holes in my Hurricane. Ground crew counted them. Aircraft flew again the next morning. Unteroffizier Heinrich Hönisch of Jagdgeschwader 27 wrote to his brother on September 19th, a letter intercepted by British censors after his capture. The Tommies fly these Hurricanes like they are indestructible. Yesterday I put half my cannon ammunition into one, and it kept coming at me. I broke off the attack. The other pilots in my staffel are the same now. We see Hurricanes, and we look for easier targets. This is not what they told us in training. We were supposed to be the hunters. The psychological reversal ran deeper than tactical caution. Lieutenant Gustav Rödel, who would survive the war with 98 victories, described the moment German confidence shattered in his 1972 memoir. In Poland and France we owned the sky. The enemy scattered when we appeared. Over England, the Hurricanes attacked us. They absorbed our fire and kept shooting. We had believed our own propaganda about British inferiority. The Hurricane pilots taught us that propaganda does not stop bullets. RAF Fighter Command recognized the propaganda value immediately. Air Vice Marshal Keith Park, commander of No. 11 Group responsible for defending London and southeastern England, ensured that Hurricane victories received prominent press coverage despite the Spitfire's glamorous reputation. Squadron leader Douglas Bader, the legless pilot who commanded No. 242 Hurricane Squadron, became a national hero through newsreels that showed his battered Hurricane still flying after combat. The Air Ministry's weekly cinema newsreels emphasized the Hurricane's ruggedness, with footage of ground crews repairing battle-damaged aircraft in open fields. German propaganda responded by attempting to dismiss Hurricane victories as British exaggeration. Joseph Goebbels' propaganda ministry released statements claiming that Spitfires, not Hurricanes, were responsible for German losses. Luftwaffe pilots knew differently. Oberfeldwebel Otto Kunke, captured after bailing out over Kent on September 27th, told interrogators, "We were briefed that the Hurricane was no threat. After my first engagement, I knew the briefing was lies. It fights better than we do against bombers. Our intelligence failed us." The morale impact within Fighter Command manifested differently. Hurricane pilots developed fierce pride in their aircraft despite its unglamorous reputation. Pilot Officer Jeffrey Page, shot down and badly burned on August 12th, insisted on returning to a Hurricane squadron after recovering. The Spit was faster and prettier. The Hurricane was the fighter that brought you home. When you are on fire at 15,000 feet, you want the aircraft that can absorb damage and keep flying. By October, Luftwaffe training schools modified their curriculum. Student pilots received updated intelligence briefs that reversed earlier assessments. The Hurricane was a formidable opponent optimized for bomber destruction. Tactics, manuals advised avoiding prolonged engagements. The aircraft German aces had expected to sweep from the sky in weeks had forced the Luftwaffe to fundamentally reassess British capability. Squadron leader Peter Townsend, who flew Hurricanes throughout the Battle of Britain, later wrote, "The Germans brought their best fighters, their best pilots, and their absolute confidence in technical superiority. The Hurricane taught them that superiority is not measured solely in speed and maneuverability. We did not fly the fastest fighter, we flew the fighter that won." The lessons learned over England in 1940 would reshape air combat doctrine for the remainder of the war and beyond. The Hurricane's vindication would reshape how air forces designed fighters for the next 8 decades. Within months of the Battle of Britain's conclusion, every major combatant nation reassessed aircraft procurement philosophy. The United States Army Air Corps, observing from across the Atlantic, commissioned a technical evaluation of both the Hurricane and Bf 109 in November 1940. The report, compiled by Colonel Karl Spaatz after consultation with RAF pilots, concluded, "Speed and maneuverability are secondary to survivability and sustained combat capability. The Hurricane model demonstrates that aircraft optimized for specific missions outperform generalist designs in their intended role. This analysis directly influenced American fighter development. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, which entered service in 1942, embodied Hurricane philosophy scaled to American engineering. Massive radial engine, rugged construction, heavy armament, and ability to absorb catastrophic damage. Test pilot Robert Johnson survived a combat engagement on June 26, 1943, in which his P-47 absorbed over 200 bullet and cannon strikes from a Focke-Wulf FW-190, damage that would have destroyed lighter fighters. Like the Hurricane, the Thunderbolt's engineering prioritized bringing pilots home over maximizing performance specifications. Soviet aircraft designers drew different lessons. Alexander Yakovlev studied captured Hurricane documentation provided by the RAF in 1941 and incorporated maintainability principles into the Yak-9. Simple construction using available materials, modular components replaceable by frontline mechanics, emphasis on operational availability over technical sophistication, the Yak-9 would become the most produced Soviet fighter of the war, with 16,857 aircraft built using production methods that echoed Hawker's approach. Germany never adapted. Messerschmitt continued pursuing performance optimization through technical complexity. The Bf 109G variant, introduced in 1942, offered improved speed and climb rate, but required more maintenance, more specialized tools, and more skilled technicians. Average Bf 109G serviceability rates on the Eastern Front in 1943, 58%. Luftwaffe's squadrons operated at permanent disadvantage against numerically superior Soviet forces that maintained higher aircraft availability through simpler designs. The philosophical divide persisted into the jet age. Soviet MiG-15 design in 1947 emphasized ruggedness and field maintainability, lessons traced directly to analysis of Hurricane operations. American F-86 Sabre development incorporated survivability as primary requirement alongside performance. Both aircraft dominated Korean war skies through operational availability as much as technical capability. Post-war analysis by military historians identified the Hurricane as the inflection point where air combat theory shifted from pure performance metrics to systems thinking. Air Vice Marshal J.E. Johnny Johnson, Britain's highest-scoring fighter pilot with 38 victories, wrote in his 1956 memoir, "The Hurricane taught air forces worldwide that the fighter which flies the most sorties wins the war, not the fighter with the highest top speed. Sidney Cam understood that combat is attrition, not performance trials." Modern fighter doctrine still reflects Hurricane principles. United States Air Force Operational Sustainability Guidelines, established in 1973, mandate that fighter aircraft maintain 75% mission-capable rates under combat conditions. The specification exists because Korea and Vietnam demonstrated that technically superior aircraft with poor availability lose wars. The F-15 Eagle, designed in the 1970s, incorporated modular avionics and engines specifically to achieve high sortie rates, direct lineage to Hurricane operational philosophy. The Lockheed Martin F-35 development program faced severe criticism in the 2000s as prioritizing technical sophistication over maintainability, resulting in mission-capable rates below 60% in early deployments. Critics specifically invoked Hurricane versus Bf 109 comparisons, complex optimized design versus sustainable combat operations. Subsequent modifications emphasized modular maintenance and reduced support equipment, corrections driven by lessons first learned over Kent in 1940. The aircraft German intelligence dismissed as obsolete established principles that define air superiority 8 decades later. Availability matters more than performance, survivability enables sustained operations, and specialized purpose defeats generalist optimization. But the Hurricane's deepest legacy lies not in technical specifications or operational doctrine. The Battle of Britain officially ended on October 31st, 1940, but the Hurricane's operational dominance continued for years afterward. Of the 14,533 Hurricanes ultimately produced, they served on every front where the RAF fought: North Africa, Malta, Burma, the Soviet Union. The aircraft German intelligence had dismissed destroyed more enemy aircraft than any other Allied fighter type during the first 3 years of the war. It proved that in modern warfare, engineering philosophy matters more than performance specifications. Sustainability defeats optimization. Availability conquers speed. The Luftwaffe aces who expected easy victories in August 1940 withdrew to France in defeat by October, forever changed by an aircraft that refused to acknowledge its supposed inferiority. German tactical doctrine never recovered from the fundamental miscalculation that technical superiority on paper translates to dominance in sustained combat. This story reveals the dangerous seduction of measurable performance over operational reality. Air forces design fighters around speed, climb rate, and maneuverability because these qualities produce impressive specifications. Sidney Cam designed the Hurricane around unglamorous principles: ease of repair, battle damage tolerance, sustained sortie rates, and pilot survivability. The Luftwaffe optimized for the fighter competition. Cam optimized for the war. The final assessment belongs to Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, Commander-in-Chief of RAF Fighter Command during the Battle of Britain, who wrote in his 1941 dispatch, "The Hurricane was sneered at by those who judged aircraft by speed tables and climb charts. It was loved by those who flew it into combat and trusted it to bring them home. History does not record the victories of the fastest aircraft. History records the victories of the aircraft that kept fighting. Wars are not won by the side with superior specifications. Wars are won by the side whose systems continue functioning when everything else has failed." The Hurricane proved that unglamorous durability defeats glamorous performance every time combat transitions from theory to reality. German pilots learned this lesson at the cost of air superiority over England. The principle remains valid today. The weapon that works consistently beats the weapon that works brilliantly when conditions are perfect.